दोस्तों, good evening. You will remember that about 2-3 days back I had made a video on the border question between India and China, where we had discussed threadbare how India fares in its border dispute with China. So the situation is, I'll just recap it, that India by its own folly became one of the horses which lagged behind, because we gave up Tibet. We also gave up Aksai Chin, and we were treating China with kid gloves, and our political leadership appeared to be in off China. Well, things did change after 2019, to be frank, because when Narendra Modi came to power in 2014, he also came with the same ideas of Pandit Nehru and Shastri and Narasimha Rao and others, and he had a meeting 19 times with the Chinese President Li, and the net result was a big zero. He couldn't gauge the mind of the Chinese president. With the result, we had that famous clash at Galwan, where 20 Indian soldiers died. It's a very sad occurrence. Chinese claim 4 died. Whether 4 died or 10 died is not the point. Point is, there was a clash and Indians died for no purpose. Gentlemen, things have gone downhill after that, because when Xi and Modi were meeting together, there was a semblance of normality, and maybe Modi thought he's going to placate China, wean him away from Pakistan, and China would be neutral, China would help us because we're going to have a trade with China over $125 billion, all that. And Indians were not provoking China. Modi or whoever it was, the foreign secretary, nobody was talking about Hong Kong, nobody talking about Taiwan, nobody was talking about Xinjiang, nobody was talking about Tibet. And at one time, the Indians were trying to suppress the Dalai Lama. That also is a fact, because they said China will get annoyed. See, but the point is, we must remember that there was a dragon in Greek mythology called Hydra. It had 12 heads. So you cut one head, it will again grow. And you cut another head, again it will grow. And anybody who looked at the dragon would be turned into stone. And that's the mythology. But I will relate the Hydra to China. China is a country with vast tentacles, a one-point plan to dominate the world. Where in contrast, India's one-point plan was to live by ahimsa. And we have had very foolish statements, and I will not go into all that again, when Dr. Rajendra Prasad said that we don't need the army. We can police the border with the civil police. Even Pandit Nehru, once in anger, when the army, since he had gone to him with a proposal for the reform of the army, he just tore it up and threw it away. He said, "Do one the army." So that sort of a philosophy is not going to succeed against China, because China has produced great conquerors. And at one time, gentlemen, China was the middle kingdom, the center of the world, and technology and governance. The Chinese, for the last 200 years, say from about 1800 onwards, slipped down. And that was when the central authority became weak. Warlords began to roam around China. And the net result was the Western powers, led by the British, the French, and all of them, got a chance to meddle in China's affairs. And there were some battles. And the British used the Indian army for that. Opium Wars, 1856, 1900, the Boxer Rebellion, Chinese were defeated. But after Mao Zedong came into power, China wanted to reverse the wrongs of history. And this is where India should have watched very carefully. India was living by, in the past age, that what the British have done is correct. Not forgetting that none of the Indian kings, whether it was Aurangzeb, Akbar, or Kanishk, ever had control over Aksai Chin and Nepal. I'm not aware about it. If you see my last video, I have given the maps also, which show that the Indian Empire never extended to those areas. Anyway, if you are going to inherit the mantle of the government which ruled India and went away, that is the British Empire government, the king, then you got to follow it up. You got to follow up. You got to build up your strength. You got to have a global vision, and which unfortunately the Indian leadership. I don't blame Nehru for it. I blame the entire Indian leadership. Somebody keeps talking that Patel did this, did Patel oppose Nehru and all. And damn it, he was the deputy prime minister. He could have put his foot down. He never did anywhere. And we have the sad news which I was going through, the last days of the British Raj by Leonard Mosley, where Patel had specifically written a letter, I believe, to Jinnah, where he had said that you forget about Hyderabad and I'll forget about Kashmir. And even Lord Louis Mountbatten went to Srinagar, and he also conveyed to the Raja, the Maharaja Hari Singh, that, well, if you don't join Pakistan, I know one man in the Indian cabinet who will accept it. So let's not talk too big about Patel. He's a great man. I admire him. He's a strong man, integrated about 5 Indian states. But he had his weak points. He was the deputy prime minister, could have exerted more in Tibet. He never did. Now, gentlemen, the situation has continued, and India is now in a catch-22 situation. Yesterday, I went and bought a small charger for my car, and the first thing I noticed on that charger was made in China. It costs about 400 rupees. And if such a small item is to be imported from China, you can well imagine where the Indian industry is. We are in the very rudimentary stage. And compared to China, who have produced their own fighter, it may be a second-class fighter. It's not a good fighter, the Chengdu, the J-20, but it is classified as a 5th-generation fighter. And we haven't been able to make a single fighter here. You know, the fighter which we are making in India, I will not name it. You all know the new Tejas fighter, which is India is selling around. It's got an imported engine. That engine doesn't come, the fighter doesn't fly. So what is Indian in it? India earlier had made also the HF-24, and gentlemen, that's a wonderful plane. But at the same time, it had an underpowered engine. It was using a Rolls-Royce engine. So question is, India is not self-reliant. And no Indian leadership, and I would put the blame on the Congress, really had any idea to make India self-reliant. So all the ills of those 70 years of Congress rule have come now, and now China is belligerent. And that is the point to be noted. They have allied with China, who they say, with Pakistan, who they say is their iron friend. Iron friend, yes. And that is the reason the Chinese, which all the time had been neutral on Kashmir, this time did not come to attend the meeting in the Kashmir Valley on the tourist group. That is the sad part of the whole story. Very sad indeed. But you can't help it, because India lost clout with China. Perhaps if India had done or settled the border with China, and this complex situation doesn't have a solution, that is the point. The solution is only one, a border settlement with China, which India never had. Why we didn't have it, I'm too small a man to comment, but I will say, the historian, India was carrying on the legacy of British imperialism forward. We must bear in mind that the Russia and China also had a very big border problem. And if you remember, in '69, there were so many border clashes between them, and many Chinese soldiers and a few Russians died. But now they are iron friends, strong allies facing America. So India could have solved the border problem, but they didn't want it. That's the problem. And if you didn't want it, you can't go around talking of ahimsa and all that, crap which has got no meaning. Ahimsa is not a state policy anywhere in the world, and even The ancient Indian kings, the warrior kings like Kanishk or Chandragupta, never adopted ahimsa. They didn't believe in ahimsa. Yet we have the sad spectacle of Mohandas Gandhi, spreading this word ahimsa. Ahimsa, it's okay, it's a personal belief. You want to do ahimsa, have a personal belief. You can't extend it to the political field or the global or the strategic field. You need a strategic vision, and we had tremendously big strategic thinkers in Kautilya, so many of them. But then you can't get everything in life, perhaps. That's what it means. So now we have a border problem with China, and the problem is aggravated. Aggravated in the sense China claims the entire Arunachal Pradesh. They say that's southern Tibet. They claim the entire Aksai Chin. They do not recognize the Indian reorganization of Kashmir. They do not recognize that there is a border with India. Now that's a crucial point. They say it's an undefined no man's land, and they call it the line of actual control. It's not like we have the line of control with Pakistan. Here we have the line of actual control, LAC. And that keeps on changing. When Chinese go and capture some more territory, that becomes the LAC. And after 2014, when Mr. Modi came to power, I think China has captured hundreds of square miles of Indian territory. They've taken it. It's salami slice. They keep on doing it. And I wonder how Mr. Modi couldn't really understand this situation. And he kept on meeting the Chinese president 19 times. And the result was a big zero. Even now, India is not reacting to China on any of the issues, while the Chinese keep on reacting everything against India. Well, we are also dependent on China now so badly. A trade of $130 billion, of which $100 billion in favor of China. And the day you stop that trade, millions of Indians will be jobless. They won't have any money because so much is the Indian industry become dependent on China. But all said and done, something has to move forward. And India is in a very peculiar and dangerous position at the moment. The Americans have offered India membership of NATO. That is an associate membership. And once India joins the American bandwagon, then you're going to have a break with Russia. And you have a break with Russia means Russia is never going to put any pressure on China on Kashmir. So we have the fond hope that we are friends with Russia, so Russia will say to China, well, hold on, or something like that. But Russia is economically weak. They're militarily strong, but economically weak. They're not a global economic power. And the next result, gentlemen, is that I do not think India is going to get much out of the Russian relationship further on. Well, you can have dreams. You remember Harold Robbins wrote that famous book, Dreams Die First. Well, you can keep dreaming, but they die first. So what should India do now? China is looking to repeat 1962, gentlemen. Let's be very clear about it. In 1962, thanks to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, India lost 3,000 soldiers to the Chinese attacks. Indian soldiers were fighting with outdated rifles. They'd each been given 15 rounds of ammunition, and once that finished, the Chinese just bayoneted them to death. And they captured another 2,000 to 3,000 prisoners. I don't have the exact figures because nobody released the exact figures of the prisoners. But I do know that some of the prisoners who were released by the Chinese were shouting, China Zindabad, because they were very well treated. So that is the Indian character. That is the Indian character. The Indian prisoners were shouting, I believe some of them, China Zindabad. So, gentlemen, what I'm coming to is a different issue now. We have to face China. That's what I'm saying. You can't keep brushing everything under the carpet and say, we'll do it. It's not going to be like that. The opposition, we have got a lot of Jai Chands, we have got a lot of Mir Jafars, I think there are a lot of question marks on Mr. Rahul Gandhi going to China and signing some memorandum for money and all that is not proved. But I think there is, you can't have smoke without fire, and that's the sad part of the whole thing which is happening. So, gentlemen, a border clash with China is on the cards, and India has to get ready for it. I think it's about time that Mr. Modi stopped sitting on the fence and he has to cast his lot somewhere. It's very easy to talk India, Visham Guru and all that, which is just got no, these are platitudes. Now, Modi went to New Guyana. I give you an example. He was given a lot of honor, and everybody's talking, Modi's a great man and all that. But their interest is with the United States, and they have permitted America to position troops in New Guyana. Now, what that is called power politics. Whereas India's Prime Minister only went and talked and came back with some economic aid. You see, these countries want security, they want to live freely and get away from the danger from China. And who's got to do it? India can't guard its own border with China. Why the question that India will go to New Guyana or something and help them? So we have got to have a policy very clear. And we must be very clear that Pakistan is an enemy. It's an enemy which is not a country facet enemy, but a religious faceted enemy. The basic problem of Pakistan is the rise of Islamic fundamentalism there, and we have a lot of fundamentalists here in India also who keep on talking some arrant nonsense, but then they are allowed to do it. So India has to get ready for the conflict with China. And for that, you have got to have peace in the hinterland in India. Look at what's happening in Chhattisgarh. Only just a month back, 20 Jawans of the CRPF were blown to smithereens. And then we have the revolt in the insurrection now in Manipur, where the two tribes, the Mitai and the Kuki, are fighting each other. And today the Chief Minister just announced that he killed 30 terrorists have been eliminated. So that is the situation in a border state, with a very sensitive border state. And when these states doing these things is because there is no semblance of a strong center. I'll give you an example. We have President Erdogan, who has been elected now for the 5th time, I think. And he's going to be president of Turkey for the next 5 years. But till 2014, Turkey was like India, a parliamentary democracy with a prime minister. But Erdogan changed it and made it a presidential system. And now Turkey is a presidential system. Somebody's got to bell the cat in India, because we don't need a parliamentary democracy which has got so many fiscalist tendencies. You need a government at the center which has got unitary strength and control over the country. You can't have revolts, burnings, arsons continuing in Manipur. Tomorrow it will start in Nagaland. Now we have the opposition boycotting parliament. I mean, it's the height of idiocracy, I will say, because the parliament belongs to the people of India. It doesn't belong to the opposition. They should have gone and attended it. You have your differences, that's part of life, but you don't go do the things to drag the country down. One of the reasons is, of course, as I'm digressing a little, is that the opposition's got no locus standi in India. They don't have a leader to match Modi. And this is the time that Modi must crack the whip, as we say. You need some strong man at the center. I give credit to Indira Gandhi, who in 77 or 78 launched the emergency. It was required at that time. I don't see why India can't do it. And why should the BJP always be talking of dynastic politics? Dynasties are part of life, history. Gentlemen, I've come back to the fundamental question. We have a border dispute with China which we have not settled, and we have to face China now. China looking for a border clash. And if India becomes a member of the NATO, do you think the Americans are going to come and fight here in India? There's a question which you can answer yourself. They haven't gone anywhere is where the interests of other nations are involved. They go only where their interests are involved. It is in their interest now to engage China on the western border because they're scared of China in the eastern border, that is Taiwan. And Japan, of course, is a spent force. A bullet which is fired is over. They fired all the bullets they had in the Second World War, and now they are just hanging around, and they created enough atrocities during the period when they were in control in Southeast Asia. You can't forget that. Gentlemen, all said and done, the fact still remains that Mr. Narendra Modi is the best man at the moment to lead. He has learned from his mistakes, I'm sure, and he's going ahead. He's beefing up the army, he's beefing up everything. But then a clash with China is not going to be a joke. Gentlemen, I'll discuss an actual battle scenario in my next video. Watch out for it. In the meanwhile, I'll say Jai Hind, glory to India, and if you get time, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to my channel and come back for more. Goodbye and take care.